Good evening, and welcome back, listeners, for another episode of Global Women Enrichment. We are hoping that you definitely will be enriched this evening. We are going to be talking about social justice. So, what is social justice? Social justice is justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges. Social justice assigns rights and duties in the institutions of society, which enables people to receive the basic benefits and burdens of cooperation. The relevant institutions often include taxation, social insurance, public health, public school, public services, labor law, and regulation of markets to ensure fair distribution of wealth and equal opportunity. So, Laura, tell me what social justice means to you in, what should I say, in terms of privilege and everyone having the same opportunities, whether in the school system and whatever else you want to talk about.
So I think that justice, if we strip it down to its most basic, is the ability for everyone to have the equal opportunity to meet their basic needs and prosper. So if we're looking at that from the basic needs in terms of wealth and all of the other things that you just described, I'm sure Sandra is going to get into a bit more on, beyond the wealth and the material sorts of things. But when it comes down to that, I do believe that we all should have the ability to meet those basic needs, whether it's education, whether it's shelter, whether it's clothing, whether it's food, whatever that is, and not just our basic needs, but the ability to prosper. Because if we are all just meeting our basic needs, where's the fun in that, right?
Right.
And so many times, if you look at not getting political, but just talking about different types of societies, if you're looking at communism, if you're looking at socialism, to what is in the history books, you could say, oh, people's basic needs are met, so let's just stop there. No. Really, justice is being able to live free and have the ability to prosper. That's how I would define it.
Awesome. And Sandra?
I'm going to piggyback on what Laura said, for there's no use in repeating the same thing. But when I think of justice and social justice, as a healthcare provider, my thoughts go towards the social determinants of health and what it is that gives people equal access to healthcare. What is it in our environment that allows people to prosper? Capitalism, since you mentioned some political styles, does have some good in it, but then it comes the question of privilege. What if you don't have the opportunity? What if you don't have the privilege to get higher education for whatever reason? What if your social determinant of health has to do with homelessness and not being able to get adequate food, the concept of food insecurity? These things are not just. And as a people who recognize that we're all connected, we're all brothers and sisters, don't we have a responsibility to help in making justice happen? And how do we do that? How do we fulfill the scripture that says we should do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God? Because I think that speaks to a social responsibility that we each have.
Right. And I thought about something while Laura was speaking, while both of you guys were sharing your thoughts, because biblically speaking, we have a responsibility as children of God to help those who are who have lesser than we have. Okay. No, this does not, because the Bible does tell us that those who had, they were sharing what they had with others that did not have. Right. So we can. I think it's a selfless act for us to have an abundance and be willing to help our neighbor, okay? Than for us to have an abundance and then just take it all for me, and not care about our next door neighbor who has less to nothing. Now, that being said, that does not mean that that you should expect, you should feel that because Jackie, your neighbor, has a large home, tons of money in the bank and all of that stuff, that does not mean that you are supposed to sit and expect Jackie to do this. I'm talking about people who are willing and have tried, and they are out there trying to make it happen for them and their families, but everywhere that they turn, they are having roadblocks, okay? So if you can do something to help someone, I don't think, especially if you call yourself a Christian, I don't think you should think twice about doing it. Like, for example, I remember as a young girl, and this is a true story, that there were two preachers praying for someone who did not have anything in their home. They did not have any food. Their electricity was about to get turned off and all of that stuff. And they are there praying, and they're praying, and they're praying. And then it dawned on one of them, why are we here praying when God has already answered? Look around you. You have so much in your refrigerator, okay? You can take anything from there and give to this family who has less than. So I just think that social justice for me means that doing everything in my power to help those who are less fortunate.
And I think you touch on something, and I think it falls into social justice, and that is we all have a responsibility that if we are able, then we should do. And I'm not just saying if we are able to give, we should give. I'm saying if we are able body and mind, then we should be out there working to give ourselves our basic needs and prosper. Because there are so many in at least our American culture that have the victimology and the give to me, give to me, give to me, and they don't, even though they're able-bodied and mind, do not go and do what they need to do for their own social justice. Right. And so I think that there's two sides that we need to look at. Those of us that have, absolutely, in giving we receive, right? So we have to, being followers of Christ, we have to give, and we have to help others that are in need. However, a need is a true need, not a need created by you want to sit on your booty and not do anything and maybe just collect a check that somebody else is helping to pay for. So there are some people that might be listening to us saying, oh, work hard, and you'll get there. And they're like, but I am working hard, right? And so I think that, I still learn every day on how to make money work. And I think it goes beyond, just the point I made of get out there and work, and if you're able, mind and body. We also have to go out there and research what are the different ways that I can work. Because sometimes, yes, it might be, you're working at Walmart, or you might be working at the airport, or wherever it is you're working, but there are other ways to look at how else can I have income? What other things can I do? And I'm not saying that by saying, oh, pick up a second job, a third job, a fourth job. That's not what I'm saying. There are things, and it is free information. You can go to the library. You can, surround yourself with people that, to your point, it could be Jackie has more. Well, maybe it's having a conversation with Jackie and saying, Jackie, how did you get there? and being able to look for ways to help you achieve those goals and those metrics that you're looking for.
Dr. Brown?
I think the church has a responsibility in social justice. We don't need to be political, but I believe the church is called to help its members. And the early church began, as Venoria alluded to, with everyone pooling their resources for the betterment of the body. Now, I'm sure that in today's 21st century, people would look at me crazy. But what if we had a pool? And I know that some churches do it, where money is given and that money is used to help people in difficult times. Whether it's clothing, paying the light bill, making sure a family is fed, making sure people receive health care. But I think it's very important that those of us who are blessed, and I think all of us sitting at this table, we're rich. We're
Yes,
very rich. We may not have the millions of famous people, but we definitely have God in our lives. We are prospering as God has allowed us to prosper in good health, in how we work, in how we're valued among our friends and in the community. And is it possible that we can create opportunity for others? You know, if someone is meeting hard times and always having a roadblock, how can we help that person fish versus giving them a fish?
Exactly.
And so this is where I believe the church has a critical responsibility. Many times we think it's the government that is supposed to do this, but that's not how it originally was. It was the church of God, the people of God, that came together and took care of the widows and the orphans and the people in need. And I really believe, without creating any problems out there, that the church has lost its flavor and power by giving that to the government. It's our job. And as we do that, as we show social care and social justice, guess what? We live Christ, and people can't help but run to the Savior. So to me, it's a gospel thing. It's the gospel message of giving sacrificially as Christ gave himself sacrificially for us. And we need not be greedy. We need not be so full of ourselves and what we want and need and materialism that we're going to die and leave one day.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Brown. Not to be materialistic and focus on the wants. And that's what sometimes people find themselves doing. They focus on their wants, right? So they take their money and they feed on their wants. And then they expect you to pick up their needs. You see what I'm saying? In other words, I want that $5,000 pair of boots, okay? But I have my $1,000 mortgage or rent or what have you to pay. I'm going to spend my money and get those boots regardless, and then I'm going to want somebody to pick up the slack. And
but my
help me
question is, who
with my
taught
rent.
them that? How did they
How did
get
they
there?
get to that? It's because some people just stay and, they keeping up with the Joneses. I see somebody and I want to be like that person, though you don't know how that
this
person.
is what I'm saying, Venoria and Laura, is that if the church functions as it should, this becomes a gospel conversation where people begin to realize that it's not about me, but share, share, share. And therefore, we teach through our community of the church and Christ-likeness versus being politically involved, Christ-likeness, that as God has given to you, that's where you function. You know, my dad taught me something I'll never forget. He told me, no matter how much money you have, present yourself one way. So that if today you don't have but $1, you're the same person as you are if you have $1 million.
Exactly.
And so I think that kind of stability has built how I look at life. Why do I need 2 cars if I only need 1 car and I can only drive one at a time from A to B? Why do I have to have a car sitting in my garage that I am not using? Now, don't get me wrong out there. If that's how you feel and that's how you're blessed, that's your blessing. But that's not my blessing. I do not feel comfortable spending my money on material things that I'm going to leave when somebody is hungry. I cannot do it. It's not how my social Christian justice works. Now, if God has blessed you to have mansions, as He has done for many people, and those many people with their mansions are now helping many people, that's wonderful. Come on, they're the Steve Harveys of the world who lived in their cars and are now giving back. There's the Tyler Perrys of the world. They're the Oprah Winfreys of the world. And we can list so many other names. And they're very blessed. They're living in mansions and they're giving millions of dollars to help the less fortunate.
And that's the situation. I'm glad you mentioned all of those celebrities, because I think what has become, or society has become so obsessed with celebrities, okay? And they see what they have, because the celebrities, a lot of them, they showcase what they have, okay? So you are sitting at home and you are in awe of these people and you want to be like them. But how are you going to be like them when, like you said, Tyler, you see them now, but think about where they used to be, okay? So they have been blessed and they are doing their thing. They are blessing others because they gave immensely to many different organizations. If you're out there, all of you that Dr. Brung just listened, Global Women Enrichment, we are a non-for-profit organization. Send some love our way so that we can bless the community.
Or actually, we'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast.
Have you as a guest, exactly. Yes, but we have to be cognizant of the way as Christians how we portray ourselves and all of that stuff. And yes, we have to have a giving spirit, but at the same time, we have to find a way to encourage those that are less fortunate to change their mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There's one thing you both mentioned, and I think it's important to touch on. And Sandra, you were saying, how you can't feel like you have this money and use it on something that you don't place value on because you want to give it to someone who's less fortunate. I think the important thing to note here is we're not saying if you have money, it's bad to have money.
No,
and you
right,
can't,
it's not at all.
And you've got to give it to somebody else that's in lesser need. That is not what we're saying, and that's why we gave the examples we gave. And actually, as you make more money, you can impact more lives in the way that you give. Right. So making money is not bad. It's actually a tool to be able to impact more lives.
Right. That's right. And that's why we are blessed, so we can bless others.
Right. Yeah. And I think let's bring it down to some practical conversations here. We're talking in generalizations. So I like to say, okay, I'm not Oprah Winfrey, so I can't move the mountain, but I can move a stone. Yes. So I may not have her millions, but if I have $100, can I give you 10? So you think of the tithe, you think of the church, you think of giving through the church, and then you think of opportunities right around you. Think, our listeners, is there anybody around you that you can help? If I can help somebody as I go along, then my living will not be in vain. That's a song from my childhood that matters. I cannot give to develop vaccines and to build big hospitals, but can I help somebody who is trying hard and just needs a little help? And maybe I can help that person. And I will tell you, we just had Christmas some months ago. And whenever Christmas comes around, my philosophy in my family, I do it in my family. I tell my family, this is about Jesus' birthday. What can we give in Jesus' name? And if we can do that every month, once a week, whatever is your choice as an individual, ask yourself and ask God, what can I do to help somebody who is less fortunate than I am? And see what he leads you to do. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and you're talking about, Christmas not too long ago. We worked with the project Christmas Smiles.
That's right.
To help those that aren't able to provide gifts to their children during Christmas. And there's so many different opportunities in our community, whether it's our neighbor or there's a Thanksgiving drive, there's the Christmas drives, there's their Easter drives, the back to school drives. There's so many different ways that you can get involved to help those in need.
Yeah. You have a single mom
Yes.
who needs to work and needs somebody to watch her kid. It sounds so simple,
Right.
yet we miss those opportunities. Maybe she can't go to work because there's nobody she trusts to take care of her child. You know, and these are things that I think are critical that we can do. We have young people who are struggling with school. Maybe we can tutor. Maybe we're great at something and they just need a little help
And that is
so that they can do better.
That is such a valuable point that you made, that a struggling mother or a mother who has no one to take care of her child, and you can volunteer. It's so interesting because a lot of us, we put the emphasis, everything is monetary. But there's so much more we can give. Give of your time, of yourself. I mean, if you don't have the money, you know, just give, just show that you care. Find ways, get involved with your community and all of that stuff.
Well, in the church, we talk about time, talent, and treasure.
Yes.
Right? So there are many different ways to give. And, you know, talking about single moms, you know, during the time I was a single mom, there were times where I was like, how am I going to have school uniforms for my kids? And where's that money going to come from? And I will tell you, without even asking, I had another mom come up to me one day and say, hey, listen, I bought these uniforms last year for my son. He's now moving up into the higher grade and is not going to be able to use them. They still have the tags on them. By chance, do you need them? I was like, thank you, God. I've got uniforms for my kids, you know? So something that simple, you know, can really help change a life.
Because remember, he promised to supply your needs, not your wants.
Yes.
And he supplies many of our wants too.
Too, he does.
But you know what? It takes us back to a simpler time when people prayed and believed, and God used his people to miraculously help others without anybody knowing. I think we have just become too technologically dependent that we have lost our ability to depend on Jehovah Jireh, the great provider. You know,
I shall not want.
let's bring that back to social justice. We need to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. And if we walk humbly, we're going to ask God, how can I help someone?
Right.
You know, we may not have the millions, but we're certainly rich. And a lot of us are rich. You know, if you just think of Maslow hierarchy of needs, so many people are rich. We don't realize it. And we're always wanting more without seeing the abundance that we have.
And so bringing it back to social justice, at the end of the day, we had the greatest example of someone who was all about social justice. And, you know, and so, you know, when we look at what Jesus did and really wanting there to be freedom and have everyone have the ability to have their needs and prosper. I mean, we talk about that in the Bible a lot.
Yes.
And so it's also about social justice in the people that are on the fringe of society, the people that are in the middle of society. And we don't have to look too far for an example on how to do that.
That's right. So there you have it. This was a conversation on social justice. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you next week.